Welcome to my next Better Call Saul Season 2 episode review video. Before I get into that, though, pretty important, if you are caught up to the point where I am every watching or watching Better Call Saul, or you're just not entirely sure, then you definitely need to take the initiative and pay attention to the episode's title, which of course I'll mention, as well as put in the description. If that happens to be the case, you find that you're not caught up, it would be my recommendation that you don't watch this video any further to avoid any potential spoilers. And for all of you that are wondering, I've already seen Better Call Saul one time all the way through, and for the most part, really love this show. The beginning of the show is a little bit boring, but once it gets going, it really hooks you. So want to rewatch the show and let it resonate, because I binged it to get caught up right as season 6 had begun. So there's a few episodes that I was half paying attention to, so this time I wanted to let everything resonate and really focus in on it. So with all that said, and actually I did do reviews of Better Call Saul Season 6. I caught up to the new episodes, so if you want to check those out, I'll put the link to those videos right here. That's the link in the end screen with about 20 seconds left to go to the video. Just click on that if you want to check those episode videos out, and I'll put my Breaking Bad playlist right there with everything I did Breaking Bad related. So with all that said, this will be Better Call Saul Season 2, Episode 5. The title of this episode is called Rebecca, and this will be my review reaction recap after just finishing watching the episode. So we start off in 1992. A hypersensitivity-free Chuck replaces a dead bulb in his dining room chandelier without flinching. He puts on music and then makes his way to the kitchen to help his wife, Rebecca, prepare dinner, and Chuck apologizes in advance for the guests they're expecting, Jimmy, his brother, whom he describes as an acquired taste. Rebecca isn't worried, but they come up with a plan in which she will tug her on her earlobe if she tires of Jimmy and wants to end dinner early. Jimmy arrives with a six-pack in hand and is impressed by Chuck's house. Chuck invites him inside. Over dinner, Jimmy congratulates Rebecca on her impressive career as a concert violinist. When Jimmy awkwardly brings up their wedding, she politely changes the subject and asks Jimmy about his first week in the mailroom at HHM. The conversation lulls to an uncomfortable silence, so Jimmy begins telling lawyer jokes. Rebecca smiles, genuinely amused. As Chuck heads into the kitchen to retrieve dessert, she jumps in with a joke of her own. The two dissolve into hysterics, both too preoccupied to notice Chuck pulling at his own earlobe, his fake smile beginning to falter. While reading in bed later that evening, Rebecca tells Chuck that he shouldn't have worried so much about Jimmy. Chuck takes a crack at a lawyer joke of his own, but it falls flat, and Rebecca humors him with a polite chuckle, then resumes reading. Chuck stares straight ahead, jealous of Jimmy's natural charm and the effect he had on Rebecca, one that he himself couldn't replicate. And then we go to present time in Better Call Saul in 2002. Jimmy works late at Davis and Maine and leaves a voicemail for Kim, believing he's found something that could get her out of the doc review room. As he wraps up, he's surprised by a perky associate, Erin Brill. She produces a stack of heavily redlined pages and explains that Cliff asked her to read one of Jimmy's briefs. Indignant, Jimmy realizes that Cliff has asked her to babysit him. Instead of arguing, though, he agrees he'll meet Erin in her office in just a minute. The second she's out of sight, Jimmy grabs his things and sneaks out. And then at HHM, Kim continues her stint in the doc review room. Jimmy finds her and gives her a formal complaint he had written on her behalf, Wexler versus HHM. He explains that Chuck is clearly punishing Kim to get Jimmy and urges for her to sue the firm for mistreatment. Kim points out that she's in trouble because Jimmy went behind Cliff's back and that Jimmy should have known Howard would punish her just as he did when she lost the Kettleman case. Jimmy disagrees. Even if Howard thinks he's calling the shots, Chuck is pulling the strings. Jimmy offers to quit Davis and Maine to appease Chuck, but Kim dismisses the idea. "You don't save me," she insists. "I save me." The next morning, Jimmy arrives at Davis and Maine to find Erin already waiting in his office. He apologizes for ditching her and launches into an elaborate excuse Aaron sees through it and cuts him off, and Jimmy drops the act and agrees to look at her notes. Meanwhile, inside a stairwell at HHM, Kim spends her lunch break making calls, trying to drum up new business and get back on Howard's good side. As charming as she is, she strikes out on every lead. Deflated, she returns to the doc review to keep working. And then in the parking booth, Mike chats on the phone with Stacy. She raves about how much she and Kaylee like the hotel Mike has put them up in and asks if he can come visit. And then Mike puts off a visit, not wanting Kaylee to see his face, which is still badly bruised from his encounter with Tuco Salamaka. He hangs up just as Jimmy and Aaron pull up. Jimmy is shocked to see Mike's condition, but he doesn't explain the circumstances that led to his injuries. And then inside the courtroom, Jimmy approaches the contract administrator, whom he hasn't seen since his days working with the public defender's office. He requests a hearing for Thursday morning. The clerk denies his request at first, but he warms her up when he presents her with a Beanie Baby. Aaron snatches the toy away, berating Jimmy for trying to bribe the clerk. It's a gift. That's how it works here. You grease the wheels of the justice, Jimmy argues. Aaron refuses to budge under the clerk's withering glare. Finally, the clerk gives Jimmy a hearing date on Thursday afternoon the following month. As they walk away, Aaron claims she's not trying to get Jimmy in trouble. She's trying to keep him out of it. He barely stops her from following him into the men's room, where he runs into the ADA, Bill Oakley. Oakley has heard through the grapevine that Jimmy is now at Davis and Maine. He jealously talks to Jimmy about all the perks of working there, and then eventually leaves Jimmy alone to contemplate the inevitable life he's putting in jeopardy. Kim continues to search for a new client for HHM. At last, she receives a return call from Paige Novick, who works as a senior counselor for Mesa Verde Bank and Trust. Kim jumps for joy after arranging a meeting over the phone. Her cheer just really excited in the parking garage about that. The next day, Kim and Howard greet Paige and Kevin, the CEO of Mesa Verde, in the lobby of HHM. After a successful meeting, Kim offers to draw up a list of associates to assign to the case, and Howard informs her that someone else will spearhead that. Kim has enough on her plate in the doc review. He heads back inside, leaving Kim disheartened. Howard visits Chuck to share the good news about Mesa Verde. Chuck is impressed that Kim has snagged $250,000 in billings and possibly years of work for HHM, but Howard indicates that he hasn't forgiven her yet. Later, before sunrise, Chuck heads into HHM and works by a lantern. He's interrupted by Kim, who is dropping off paperwork. Chuck explains that he's trying to work before the office opens and asks Kim to make them each a cup of coffee. Sitting uncomfortably in Chuck's office, Kim bluntly asks whether she has a future at HHM. Chuck tells her that they have a lot in common, namely being compromised by Jimmy. He describes how Jimmy embezzled $14,000 from their father's corner store while they were growing up, even though their father refused to believe it was true. When their father was forced to sell the store and died 6 months later, Jimmy cried harder than anyone else at the funeral. Chuck offers to help Kim with Howard, saying her talents are being wasted in doc review. Then we have Mike eating alone at Loloya's when Hector Salamaco, Tuco Salamaco's uncle, the guy that rings the bell, but not ringing the bell yet in the wheelchair, sits across from him in his booth. Hector offers $5,000 if Mike tells the police that Tuco's gun was actually Mike's, a move that would reduce Tuco's potential jail time considerably. Mike argues that then he'd be the subject to the gun charge, but Hector points out that the authorities usually go easy on ex-cops, and then Hector leaves, instructing Mike to think about the proposal, and that's what ends this episode of Better Call Saul. So, pretty good episode, a little bit slower at times, well, most of the time, but it obviously develops Kim Wexler's character. It starts the Salamanca. Well, we already saw Tuco, but now we see the great Hector Salamanca, but he's not in his wheelchair, and he hasn't had a stroke yet, and he can talk. So what happens to Hector Salamanca? I'll give this episode an 8.0 out of 10. And then, as many of you know, I give a character of the episode. Now, obviously, Jimmy is the character of every episode, but I think in this particular episode, I try to go with somebody else other than Jimmy, and I'm going to go with Kim for this one because she was obviously the highlight. She got that Mesa Verde case for HHM, and that was a pretty big deal. Although Chuck had his moments, Howard Hamlin had his moments, and Mike had his moments as well, but Kim Wexler, definitely the character of the episode. So you've heard everything that I have to say. Now it's your turn. If you're a fan of Better Call Saul, Breaking Bad, or El Camino, a Breaking Bad movie, and you want to help me out with the YouTube algorithm, please consider Hulk smashing the like button, share the video with a friend, put this video on any one of your social media platforms. Don't forget to sound off in the comment section about what your thoughts are on this episode of Better Call Saul. What would you rate the episode, and who would be your character of the episode? Remember to click right here for my Better Call Saul Season 6 episode review videos if you're caught up to that point, and click right here for my Breaking Bad reviews. That's if you want to see any of those. And then last but certainly not least, don't forget to hit that sub button. Subscribe to the channel. You're watching the video anyway. Join the team, show your damn support, and be a part of something special. And you never know what you're going to see on JDevTV.